Then she hit the 2,000-yard shot. Standing. The desert does not care who you think you are. It does not recognize rank, reputation, or the stories men tell about themselves in bars and briefing rooms. It does not care about confidence or volume or swagger. It listens only to fundamentals: wind, gravity, patience, and truth. At Marine Corps Base Black Mesa, the desert had been stripping people down to those fundamentals for over 30 years. It was 217 hours. The night was cold enough to bite through gloves, the kind of cold that crept up your wrists and reminded you that comfort was never guaranteed. Floodlights washed the firing line in pale white, throwing long shadows that stretched toward the distant horizon where steel targets waited, tiny, merciless, and silent. Second Lieutenant Elena Marrow stood perfectly still. Her boots were planted shoulder-width apart in the sand, heels grounded, knees unlocked. The rifle rested against her body not like a weapon, but like a truth she had already accepted. Her breathing was slow, controlled, barely visible in the chill air. 2,000 yards downrange, the target was almost imaginary. Most shooters hated distances like that. The human mind rebels against them. The target looks too small, too far, too indifferent. The margin for error becomes unforgiving. Fractions of wind calls, micro-adjustments in body tension, the slightest arrogance punished immediately. Behind her, someone laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was worse than that. It was dismissive. "Wrong gun, sweetheart." The words drifted across the firing line like smoke. A few men chuckled. Someone shifted their weight. Another adjusted night vision goggles, already assuming the outcome. Elena did not turn around. She did not stiffen. She did not respond. Instead, she checked her bubble level again. Perfect. She rolled her shoulder once, subtly, letting the weight of the rifle settle fully into her frame. The rifle was heavy, intentionally so. Long-barreled. Bolt action, custom-built. Old school in a place that worshipped new technology and faster follow-up shots. She had chosen it anyway, because this rifle did not forgive impatience. Neither did she. The desert wind whispered low and deceptive across the sand. At the firing line, it barely touched the flags, but 2,000 yards away, Elena could see it bending the mirage sideways, faint and unmistakable. She adjusted. No one noticed. They were too busy watching her fail in their heads. Black Mesa was not a base you requested, it was a base you were sent to. Officially, it was listed as a Joint Advanced Marksmanship Evaluation and Fires Integration Facility. Unofficially, it was where careers were quietly validated, or quietly ended. There were no welcome banners here, no social media posts, no heroic music swelling behind slow-motion footage, just concrete, sand, and silence. The instructors were veterans of wars that no longer made headlines. The shooters were some of the best in the armed forces. Snipers, designated marksmen, reconnaissance marines, special operations attachments, and a few carefully selected officers who had shown exceptional aptitude. Elena Marrow had arrived 3 weeks earlier in a dust-coated government SUV with a single sea bag and a service record that puzzled people. No combat deployment yet. No flashy commendations, just clean evaluations, exceptional scores. And the same line repeated by different instructors across different schools demonstrates uncommon composure under pressure. Some people read that and nodded, others read it and frowned. Composure made insecure people nervous. From the moment Elena stepped onto the range at Black Mesa, she didn't fit the mental picture. She wasn't loud. She didn't announce herself. She didn't try to prove anything. She listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, it was precise and brief. She wore her rank without leaning on it. And she carried a rifle that immediately drew attention, not the latest semi-automatic precision platform that dominated the firing line, not the rifle everyone expected, a bolt action. Heavy, long, purpose-built. Someone muttered, "Is this a museum?" Elena ignored it. She always did. Because she had learned something early in her career. People reveal themselves fastest when they think you are beneath them. Gunnery Sergeant Mark Voss had seen every kind of shooter, the talented ones, the loud ones, the fragile ones, the legends who lived up to their reputation, and the ones who didn't. He had been at Black Mesa long enough to distrust confidence and respect discipline. He noticed Elena on the first day, not because she stood out, but because she didn't. She didn't rush to the line, didn't jockey for position, didn't complain when her relay got shifted or her slot changed. She adapted, recalculated, and moved on. And when she shot, her groups told a quiet story. At 800 yards, solid. At 1,200 yards, tighter than expected. At 1,600 yards, strange. Not miraculous. Not lucky. Intentional. Voss watched her through spotting glass, brow furrowed. She's not pushing, he realized. She's waiting. That kind of patience usually came from one place, experience. Captain Reed Harlan arrived at Black Mesa with reputation intact and ego carefully polished. He was articulate, well-connected, charismatic when he wanted to be. He ran the evaluation cell for the current cycle, which meant his word mattered, sometimes more than it should have. Harlan liked predictability. He liked knowing who the top performers were supposed to be. Elena disrupted that. By the third day, her name was on his clipboard more than once, not circled, underlined. He approached her after a late afternoon shoot, leaning casually against a concrete barrier. "Lieutenant Marrow," he said, tone friendly but assessing. "Ever consider switching platforms?" She looked up from her rifle, eyes steady. "No, sir." Harlan smiled thinly. "You're putting yourself at a disadvantage." Elena didn't flinch. "Respectfully, sir, I know exactly what I'm carrying." Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, threat. From that moment on, Elena wasn't just being evaluated, she was being tested. By the end of the second week, the whispers had changed. She's consistent. She's weirdly calm. She shouldn't be this good yet. And quieter still. Someone should check her. Captain Harlan started documenting concerns. Non-standard equipment. Risk tolerance, judgment under pressure. None of it overtly damning, all of it suggestive. Voss read the notes and frowned. "This isn't right," he muttered. Black Mesa ran on hard rules, but also on unwritten ones. One of them was simple: don't embarrass the wrong people. Elena never intended to embarrass anyone. She intended to qualify. Night operations were where people unraveled. Depth perception faltered. Wind lied. Confidence cracked. The final event was supposed to be straightforward. Long-range engagements under time pressure, prone only, max distance 1,800 yards. Elena was on the final relay. The desert air was sharp and still. Then Captain Harlan made a decision. "Let's push it," he said casually. "Make it interesting." The target was raised. 1,000 yards. Voss turned sharply. "Sir, protocol?" "We'll keep it controlled," Harlan said. The murmurs started immediately. And then came the laugh. "Wrong gun, sweetheart." Elena heard it, and she let it go. The desert changed its tone after midnight. During the day, Black Mesa was harsh but honest, sunlight flattening everything, mistakes obvious, excuses impossible. At night, it became something else. Deceptive, quiet, personal. The kind of place where pressure didn't shout. It whispered. The firing line hummed with low conversation as shooters adjusted gear and checked optics. Red lights flickered on wrists and rifles. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered a curse as grit found its way into a boot. Elena Marrow stood slightly apart, her rifle resting vertically against her shoulder, bolt open, chamber clear. She watched the range like it was breathing. 2,000 yards. The number sat in the air heavier than the cold. Most of the shooters had trained for extreme range, but always under controlled parameters. Prone. Bipod locked in. Rear bag snugged just right. The body flattened into the earth until man and ground became one. Standing shots were a different animal. Standing was exposure. Standing meant owning every tremor, every breath, every doubt. Standing meant there was nowhere to hide. Captain Reed Harlan knew that. That was why he'd allowed the distance change, and that was why he'd be watching Elena closely. Harlan didn't think of himself as corrupt. Men like him never did. In his mind, he was maintaining standards, protecting the integrity of the program, ensuring that unproven officers didn't walk away with reputations they hadn't earned yet. And if that meant applying pressure, that was leadership. He watched Elena through night vision optics as she waited for her relay. She wasn't pacing, wasn't fidgeting, wasn't talking. She looked settled. That unsettled him. She doesn't look nervous, he thought. She should be nervous. Nearby, Gunnery Sergeant Voss leaned toward another instructor. "This isn't how we run it," Voss said quietly. The instructor shrugged. "Captain's call. Voss's jaw tightened. Black Mesa had survived decades because it did not play favorites, because it punished arrogance and rewarded discipline. The moment that balance shifted, even slightly, the place lost its credibility. And tonight, the balance was wobbling. When Elena's relay was called, she stepped forward without hurry. "Lieutenant Marrow," Harlan said sharply, his voice cutting through the night. "Confirm you understand the conditions." "Yes, sir. 2,000 yards. Time limit reduced. 1 round per engagement." "Yes, sir." Harlan paused, then added, "Prone position only." Elena looked at him, not challengingly, not defiantly, just directly. "Sir," she said calmly, "may I ask a clarifying question?" Harlan nodded. "The restriction based on safety or evaluation criteria?" A few heads turned. It was a careful question, professionally framed, impossible to dismiss outright. Harlan's jaw flexed. "Evaluation criteria." Elena nodded once. "Understood, sir." She stepped to the firing point. Behind her, the whispers resumed. "She's done. This'll shut her up. Watch her miss." Elena lowered herself prone, but something in her posture was different, less settled, less aligned. Voss noticed immediately. That's not her position, he thought. She's forcing it. The timer beeped. Elena brought the rifle to bear. The crosshairs danced more than she liked. The Mirage downrange twisted unpredictably. She waited. Seconds ticked away. "Time," Harlan called. Elena did not fire. A murmur rippled across the line. Harlan's eyebrows rose. "Problem, Lieutenant?" "No, sir," Elena said, calmly clearing her weapon. That was the problem. The words landed heavier than gunfire. Elena stood, not abruptly, not theatrically. She simply rose, adjusted her sling, and brought the rifle upright. Harlan's head snapped up. "Lieutenant, stand down." Elena's voice remained level. "Sir, prone is introducing instability due to terrain compaction and inconsistent rear support. Standing eliminates that variable for me." That earned a sharp laugh from somewhere down the line. Harlan's face flushed. "This is not a debate." "No, sir," Elena said. "It's a request." The night felt suddenly very still. Voss stepped forward. "Captain." Harlan raised a hand without looking at him. He stared at Elena, weighing something. Pride, control, witnesses. Cameras were rolling, sensors were active. This wasn't a private correction, it was a public moment. Deny her and risk looking arbitrary. Allow it and risk being wrong. The laugh from earlier echoed faintly in his mind. "Wrong gun, sweetheart." Harlan made his choice. 1 round, he said. "Standing, miss, and you're off the board." Elena nodded. "Yes, sir." She did not rush. That was the part that unnerved people most. She planted her feet, feeling the ground through the soles of her boots. She adjusted her grip, not tight, not loose. She leaned slightly into the rifle, letting its mass settle her instead of fighting it. Her breathing slowed. In, out, in, out. She wasn't thinking about the men behind her, or the captain watching for her to fail, or the words that had been thrown like a challenge. She was thinking about wind. At 2,000 yards, wind was never one thing. It was layers, personalities, lies stacked on top of truth. She read it the way she'd been taught, by an old Marine who had told her once, "Distance doesn't care how confident you are. It only respects honesty." She dialed, a fraction more, then stopped. "Wait," she told herself. The Mirage shifted. There. That was it. Time stretched. Someone whispered, "She's taking too long." Harlan opened his mouth to speak, and stopped, because something about Elena's posture had changed. She was no longer preparing, she was committed. Her finger took up slack on the trigger. The rifle was steady, not rigid, but alive. Balanced on the knife edge between control and surrender, the desert held its breath. And for just a moment, before the shot that would rewrite everything, no one laughed anymore. There is a moment before every decisive action where the world narrows, not dramatically, not cinematically, it simply becomes quiet. For Elena Marrow, that moment arrived not with fear, but with stillness. The rifle rested against her shoulder like it belonged there. The sling was tensioned just enough to support, not enough to fight. Her left hand cradled the forend, fingers relaxed, allowing micro-adjustments without conscious effort. Her cheek weld was consistent, her eye relief perfect. She did not blink. Downrange, 2,000 yards away, the steel target was barely more than a suggestion against the dark, a rectangular shape washed faintly by infrared illumination. To most shooters, it would have felt unreal, unreachable. To Elena, it was simply distant. Distance was not the enemy. Dishonesty was. Captain Harlan watched through night optics, his confidence eroding with every second Elena took. She's stalling, he told himself. She knows she can't make it. But something about her posture unsettled him. She wasn't wavering. She wasn't fighting the rifle. Her body language didn't read like someone improvising under pressure. It read like someone executing a plan. "Any time now," someone muttered. Gunnery Sergeant Voss said nothing. He had seen this before, not often, but enough to recognize it. The calm before a decision that could not be undone. Elena inhaled. Slow. Controlled. She let half of it out. The reticle settled, not centered but offset, accounting for wind that most people couldn't even feel at the firing line. She did not force the crosshairs onto the target. She let them drift. Gravity would do the rest. Her finger began its steady press. The rifle spoke. Not loudly, not angrily, just once. A sharp, contained crack that snapped through the desert night and vanished into open space. Recoil traveled cleanly into Elena's shoulder and down through her stance, absorbed by bone and discipline. The muzzle rose and settled. She did not move. 2 seconds passed. Then 3. Someone exhaled sharply. At 2,000 yards, time behaves differently. The bullet does not rush. It does not care about anticipation. It simply obeys physics, unbothered by the stories men tell themselves. Then, clang. The sound was unmistakable. Steel, solid, center, mass. For a fraction of a second, no one reacted. The sound echoed back across the range like a delayed verdict. The monitors flickered, the sensors updated, the data confirmed what the ears already knew. A clean hit, standing at 2,000 yards. The desert did not cheer, neither did the people, because some moments are too heavy for noise. Elena remained still for a heartbeat longer, then cleared her weapon with deliberate care. Bolt back, chamber empty, safety engaged. She stepped away from the firing line. Only then did the range erupt, not in celebration, but in disbelief. Holy! No way! Was that standing? Captain Harlan stared at the monitor, his mouth slightly open. The data left no room for interpretation, no caveats, no excuses. Harlan swallowed. Voss finally spoke. Confirmed hit. The words sounded almost ceremonial. Elena didn't look back. She didn't need to. The laughter was gone. In its place was something heavier, respect, earned the hard way. A few shooters glanced at the rifle she carried, seeing it differently now. Not outdated, not excessive. Purpose-built. Someone who had laughed earlier stared at the ground. Captain Harlan cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Marrow." She turned. "Yes, sir." His voice was measured but strained. "You may step off the line." "Yes, sir." As she walked past him, their eyes met. For the first time, Harlan looked uncertain. Not about the shot, about himself. Black Mesa did not stop because of one moment. The range reset. Relays continued. Shooters engaged targets at distances that now felt smaller. But something fundamental had shifted. People shot more carefully, spoke less, listened more, because they had just witnessed something rare, not just technical excellence but moral clarity under pressure. Voss watched Elena from a distance as she packed her rifle. She moved with the same calm she always had. No victory pose, no satisfaction on her face, just focus. He approached her quietly. "Lieutenant," he said. She looked up. "Gunny, that was—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Honest." Elena nodded. "Yes, Gunny." Captain Harlan spent the rest of the night silent. But silence does not erase actions. The cameras had recorded everything, the deviation from protocol, the pressure, the public challenge, and the result. By morning, questions would be asked. By evening, answers would be demanded. And careers, quietly, professionally, would begin to change course. Elena returned to her quarters before dawn, the desert cooling as the first hint of light crept over the horizon. She disassembled her rifle with practiced ease, cleaned it, inspected it, reassembled it, not because it needed it, but because ritual mattered. Discipline mattered. She lay back on her bunk and stared at the ceiling. For the first time that night, her heart rate rose slightly, not from fear, from release. Morning came slowly to Black Mesa. The sun did not rise so much as it revealed, pulling long shadows back into themselves, exposing tire tracks, footprints, and the subtle scars left behind by the night. The desert looked unchanged, but the people within it were not. By 0700 hours, the range footage had already been reviewed twice. By 0830, the evaluation cell was quiet in a way that had nothing to do with discipline. And by 0900, Captain Reed Harlan was no longer in control of the narrative. The first call came from the Joint Oversight Liaison, routine on paper, anything but in tone. "Walk me through the deviation," the voice on the secure line said. Harlan sat rigid at the conference table, hands folded, back straight. He had dressed carefully that morning, perfect uniform, perfect posture, his voice was steady. Operational discretion, controlled environment, calculated risk. There was a pause, denied firing position, followed by verbal pressure, followed by an exception granted under observation, the liaison said. "Is that correct?" "Yes." "And the standing shot?" Her request. Another pause. "You denied it initially?" "Yes," but then allowed it. "Yes." Silence stretched. The liaison's next words landed with precision. "Why?" Harlan opened his mouth, closed it. He realized, in that moment, that there was no version of the truth that worked in his favor. While Harlan struggled to defend his decisions, others were being asked quieter questions. Instructors, range safety officers, Gunnery Sergeant Voss, "Have you seen this before?" Pressure applied selectively? Evaluations shifting mid-cycle? Voss answered honestly, "Yes." Not maliciously, not emotionally, just factually. He didn't need to embellish. The footage did that for him. The laughter, the comment, the shift in protocol, the denial, the grudging permission, and then the shot. Data did not lie. Elena Marrow did not attend the meetings. She wasn't asked to. She spent the day the way she always did, on the range, working fundamentals. No spectators, no commentary, just the rifle, the wind, and repetition. When word began to spread that an investigation was underway, she said nothing. She had not taken the shot to expose anyone. She had taken it because it was right. That distinction mattered. Late in the afternoon, Voss found her again. "They're asking questions," he said. She nodded. "Yes, Gunny. You good?" "Yes, Gunny." He studied her for a moment. "You know this could get messy." She met his gaze. "Truth usually does." He smiled faintly. "Damn right." By evening, the decision came down, not with drama, but with finality. Captain Reed Harlan was relieved of evaluation authority pending review. No announcement, no spectacle, just a quiet reassignment and a locked office. The official language was careful, administrative realignment, procedural review. But everyone at Black Mesa understood what it meant. Influence had limits, and those limits had just been found. Harlan packed his office in silence. Awards still lined the shelves. Photos still smiled back at him. But something was gone. The certainty. He paused once, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. He had not lost because Elena was better. He had lost because he had underestimated what discipline looked like when it refused to bend. Elena was finally called in the following morning. The room was plain. No intimidation, no raised voices. Just 3 senior officers, a stack of reports, and a screen paused on the frame just before her shot broke. "Lieutenant Marrow," the senior officer said, "do you understand why you're here?" "Yes, sir." "Did you feel pressured during the evaluation?" Elena considered the question. "Yes, sir." "Did that pressure affect your decision to fire?" "No, sir." "Why not?" She answered without hesitation. "Because the decision to fire was based on conditions, not commentary." A brief nod from one of the officers. Another asked, "Would you have taken that shot if you thought it endangered anyone?" "No, sir." "Would you take it again?" Elena looked at the paused image on the screen. "Yes, sir." "Under the same conditions." The room was quiet for a moment. Then the senior officer spoke again. "Thank you, Lieutenant. That will be all." The report was classified. The conclusions were simple. Protocol had been misused, authority had been compromised, discipline had prevailed anyway. Elena passed the evaluation, not with special distinction, not with fanfare. She passed because she met the standard. That was enough. Voss shook her hand the day before she left. "You changed something here," he said. She shook her head. "No, Gunny, I just didn't let it change me." He smiled. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Elena Marrow left Black Mesa the same way she had arrived. Quietly, no ceremony, no send-off, no speeches about history being made. The government SUV kicked up dust as it rolled past the outer gate, and within minutes the base disappeared behind heat shimmer and distance. Black Mesa returned to routine. Ranges cycled. Targets rose and fell. New shooters arrived carrying confidence, uncertainty, and stories they hoped would survive the desert. But something had shifted, subtly, permanently. Officially, nothing extraordinary had happened. No press release mentioned a standing 2,000-yard shot. No after-action brief highlighted an officer who had refused to bend under pressure. No plaque was mounted. No photograph circulated. But within the quiet corridors of marksmanship schools and instructor circles, the story traveled. Not loudly, accurately, they didn't exaggerate it. That was the rule. They told it the way professionals tell stories, to teach, not to impress. She waited. She didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She let the rifle answer, and every time someone reached the end, the lesson was the same. Discipline speaks when ego fails. Captain Reed Harlan's career did not end in disgrace. It ended in redirection. He was reassigned to a staff role far from Black Mesa. No range, no authority over evaluations, no audience. For a long time, he told himself he had been unlucky. Then, slowly, something harder set in. He replayed the footage, not of the shot, but of the moments before it. The denial, the tone, the laugh he hadn't stopped. He realized the truth he had avoided. Elena had not challenged his authority. She had exposed his fear of losing it, and that realization stayed with him longer than any reprimand ever could. Months later, at a different base, under different skies, Elena stood on another firing line. New unit. New faces. Same desert wind. A young Marine beside her adjusted his gear nervously. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I heard you were at Black Mesa." She nodded. "They say you did something insane." Elena smiled faintly. "They say a lot of things." He hesitated. "Any advice?" She considered the question, then answered simply. "Don't chase moments," she said. "Chase fundamentals. Moments take care of themselves." The Marine nodded, steadier already. Elena never retired the rifle. She still cleaned it the same way, inspected it the same way, carried it with the same quiet respect. To her, it was never a symbol. It was a responsibility. A reminder that skill without discipline is noise, and discipline without humility is dangerous. She taught with it sometimes. Let students handle it. Feel the weight. Understand what commitment felt like when it rested in your hands. And when someone asked why she hadn't chosen something newer, faster, flashier, she gave the same answer every time, because this one doesn't lie to me. Years later, long after Black Mesa had seen new cycles and new names, an instructor stood before a group of young shooters and told them a story. Not about distance, not about gender, not about records. About a moment when pressure tried to turn discipline into spectacle, and failed. He ended with a simple truth. In a world full of noise, mastery is quiet. Courage does not announce itself, and integrity, when tested, always leaves a mark. Somewhere, Elena Marrow was probably on a range, checking wind, waiting patiently, and letting fundamentals do what they had always done. Tell the truth. The desert does not care who you are, but it remembers how you act when it matters. And sometimes, the most powerful response to doubt is not anger. It is a single, deliberate action executed with honesty, discipline, and courage.